Now, whether we're talking about shy kids with that high approach, high avoidance conflict, or if we're talking about kids that are low in approach and high in avoidance, either one, when we have that high avoidance motivation, we tend to see certain outcomes associated with this. And that is shy and avoidant children tend to think and process information differently from the more typical social children. We also note that the way they speak and their word comprehension and language comprehension tends to be different, and the shyness tends to interfere with their school adjustment and achievement. And this all tends to be due to an avoidance of social situations. Through avoiding social situations with their peers and with their friends, this tends to impact their cognitions, their linguistic development, and their academic development. So we're going to talk about this in a bit more detail. In terms of their cognitive development, we're really concerned about social cognition. So this is the thoughts about other people. We tend to find that kids that are in that high avoidance motivation, so the shy or the avoidant children, they're very preoccupied with the negative evaluations of other people. And because of that, they tend to be wired in such a way that they have very sensitive negative threat perception. This is the idea that when they see something ambiguous, they tend to perceive it as something threatening. Something like shadows or a person approaching them unexpectedly, they'll perceive as more negatively. This is also the idea that if we were to have someone just look at a series of faces and make judgments about what emotion the faces were experiencing, we find that when we display neutral faces, shy and anxious individuals perceive neutral faces as angry and perceive angry faces as completely enraged. And so this is the idea that a neutral, ambiguous situation tends to be perceived as very problematic and very anxiety-provoking for shy children. In addition, when they think about their interactions with others, they tend to experience what we call a self-defeating locus of control. This is the idea that when something goes wrong, they blame themselves. So if a social situation wasn't overly positive, the shy child will assume they did something wrong. But if a social situation goes positively, they will externalize and say, oh, they had to be nice to me, or I was lucky, or that's not a big deal. So if something good happens, they don't take credit for it. But when something bad happens, they internalize all the blame. And the final thing is rumination. If they have an awkward encounter with someone, they tend to replay it in their mind over and over and over again. It's like a record player on repeat. And so this is the idea that it's not positive rationalization. They're not coming to a problem solving or problem focused solution here. They're just constantly rehearsing what they did wrong and blaming themselves and internalizing that. Now, in terms of when they think about other people, because they always assume others are taking negative judgments of them, and because they always perceive neutral stimuli as negative and threatening stimuli, this really impacts their perspective-taking skills. This really impacts their ability to understand what other people are thinking. Although they're preoccupied with what other people are thinking, they're often inaccurate with doing so. And this is because they assume the worst. So when they try to figure out what is going to happen, they're usually off the mark by quite a bit. We can see this in individuals who are extremely, extremely shy. 90% of them have social anxiety. And social anxiety is tied to catastrophizing and cognitive distortions that are not real. And so we can see that 90% of the most extremely shy people tend to have these distortions and really imagine problems that are not tied to reality. So moving forward into cognitions, we can also talk a bit deeper in terms of mental health. Although shyness itself is not a clinical disorder, we know that having shyness does put us at an increased risk for things like anxiety disorders, or things like really intense feelings of loneliness or low self-esteem. We also know that it can put us at risk, depression should be on this slide. So anxiety and depression, we also know it can put us at risk for learned helplessness. Let's imagine it took a lot of energy and a lot of bravery and courage to go up to a child on the playground and ask to be friends, and they turn you down. The child may not be willing to do that a second time, and they may instead assume they'll never make friends. And so because of this, we find that shyness is a very important risk factor for a lot of these internalizing anxiety and depression markers in mental health. That being said, let's talk interventions once again. One of the best things we can do here is cognitive behavioral therapy. We know that shy individuals are not having realistic expectations and realistic judgments of others, that through CBT we can help them move from rumination to rationalization, we can help end the self-blame, and we can help them to stop catastrophizing and making giant monsters. We can help them realize that those big scary green monsters they see might actually be quite cute and cuddly, and the world's not as fearful as they thought it was. In addition to feeling more calm about the world, it's important for intervention to focus on their feelings about themselves and to feel more positive about themselves. In addition, to move towards acceptance that, yeah, they take a little bit longer to talk to others, but that's okay. They're still a good person. And if people really like them, they'll be their friend. And to feel more confident that, hey, there's lots of reasons people should like me. And this will help to boost self-esteem as well. So cognitive interventions can look at improving their view on the other people and the world, as well as improving their view on themselves.